can you clearly explain the benefit instead of the feature, which is diagnostic ultrasound? Cool. What does it do? How do you explain? You pull that thing out of your bag and someone goes, what's that thing? It looks like you're going to buzz my head. It looks like a hair clipper. What is that, Dave? What's going on? How do you explain it? You and I did a thing back when I was still in PT school where you would like come on the show and like review apps and technology and stuff like that. We do like super quick. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. That was what, 6 years ago or something?
That was a long time ago. Like I was still I remember sitting there like studying for PT school, like tests, and then being like, my phone would ding. It's like, oh, I have to do an interview. And my roommates were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I started this podcast. And they're like, what's a podcast? And I'm like, right. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be a thing. But yeah, we'd like review apps because I was like, I don't know. You're like this tech guy. Like, I don't understand apps. And we'd like rank them from like 0 to 5 or 6 beers or something like that. And he's like, does it do what it says it does? Is it easy? What's the price? Where do you find it? And then like we were done. And I feel like people do that all the time now. Like product review videos are huge, and like unboxing videos are huge on YouTube because people do want to know, like, am I buying the steak or the sizzle? Right? Because like I think we're all smart enough now, especially the next generation, man. Like I'm talking 6, 7, 8-year-olds. They're smart enough to know, like, is this crap? Like one of my friend's kids was like looking at something the other day in a store, and he's like, I don't know, is this a knockoff? And I'm like, I don't know if I knew what a knockoff was at like 7 years old, but this kid does.
A lot of this, with the kids now, it's like they're accelerated a lot of their understanding of the world compared to when we were that age.
Yeah, like I'm watching kids on iPads, and they're, one of my buddies' wives was like, I don't know how he just figured out how to use it. I'm like, I could tell you without looking at it. Number one, the kid's used to figuring stuff out digitally. Number two, it's probably a really good user interface, user design experience, because if it wasn't, the kid would just reject it. I mean, like we used to have to put like several floppy disks into a computer to load a game. And then like you had to know how to like speak DOS. Like kids Google DOS. Like that was, we're talking about, dying of cholera. Remember, what was the game where you like tried to go west in the
Oregon Trail? Was that
Oregon Trail? It was like, do you want to ford the river? And I'm like, yes. And it's like, you're dead. And I'm like, well, that was fun. Anyway, we got off track, but I don't think we're off track because the first thing I want to ask you about is technology. Is a piece of technology that you're like, this is a big deal. This could be part of the future of our profession. And with anything, with Oregon Trail or, Pac-Man or the new app, people sort of look at it, try to sniff at it. If they don't immediately figure it out, they're like, nah, this isn't the thing. And that's why bell curves exist, right? There's these early adopters. There's these laggards over on the left side of the bell curve. And then most of us come somewhere in the middle. I'm not the furthest on the right. Where are you? I'm like, maybe like one standard deviation in. Like I'm watching the early adopters, and then I'm like, I'll wait for their eyebrows to go up, and then I get excited. Where are you on that?
I would definitely say I've always been kind of like an early adopter, even if it's just tinkering or whatever, whether it's just like some interest or hobby, or if there's an actual business case or use case for whether it's the failed startup that I had before Vinicial, or with physical therapy and treatment and actual physical technology products. Or even software, like, I don't know, like Rob Vining and I, we were using Zoom, like whatever it was, like 8 years ago or something, like before anyone really knew what Zoom was. So I would say a little bit more on the early adopter side.
So let's talk about failure. We weren't planning on this, but like, when you look at like the Mark Cubans of the world or whatever, like you see successes, but we know, if you actually just think about it for half a second, that there must be a ton of failure behind every one of these successful people. Would you explain Vinicial, and then like, what'd you learn from it? What'd you take with it for what you're doing now? Because I think that's the only way we go for. No one bats 1,000. No, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, long story short, I had an iOS and Android app for HIPAA compliant secure messaging between patients and therapists, or from patients to the front desk of like an outpatient office. I was selling it to practice owners, like a monthly subscription. And it was a way for therapists to communicate with patients about HEP, home exercise program, progressions, regressions. The patient could text the front desk to schedule visit, cancel visit, pay their balance, whatever it might be. They could do that without the therapist giving out their cell phone number. So some therapists, like if Jimmy is if Jimmy's my patient, like I would give you my private cell phone number and say, text me if you have any questions or whatever. and you might say, should I put, something happened, should I put heat on it or ice on it or whatever? And we would maybe communicate. Or it's over email, which is long-winded, and people, therapists don't always check their email. So anyway, I was selling that as a patient experience communication device or platform.
What was wrong with that?
So it was good. I went to PPS a couple years with a booth each, like 2 years in a row. We got it into 11 states. It was doing well. Had a partner come on board for sweat equity, and he was going to then build it out. So the first version, I paid a design development shop to build it out, so I owned 100%. I brought on a partner who was a technical co-founder. He built an amazing iOS app, but now it was like two disparate apps. It was the original platform that I created, that I outsourced. He created a new iOS app that was like beautiful, better. Everything was great. Then he was going to build an Android app as well to connect those two. And at some point, there was like a whole bunch of software bugs that he obviously caused, not on purpose, but because of his work. And then he was not able to really fix his own software bugs. Then I had paying customers across the country that I knew in person, that I had known for 5, 10, whatever years. And they were like, hey, this is not working. Like, your app doesn't work. Like, we need to cancel or pause our payments or whatever. And I had to proactively, try to save face and just cancel everyone's payments and say, hey, we're going through some issues, whatever. And then at that point, I had some owners begging me to continue. In my gut, this is a gut thing, I didn't have enough customers saying or begging me to keep it going. Yeah. And so I just killed it. I walked away from it, started doing home visits in New York City, built a practice that I have now. But what did I learn? I mean, a ton of scar tissue. I mean, just brutal. Like, I left my W-2 job. I was making $90K plus bonuses. I was a clinic director. Plus I just knew like I could always go back to any physical therapy job. Like, I had a good safety net, but I was in my 20s. I was, 23, 24-ish, something like that. And I was like, you have to take risks early. And I grew up playing baseball, rollerblading, skateboarding, BMXing, and all those things have a commonality, which is a lot of failure, a lot of injuries or failure, hypothetical scar tissue or actual scar tissue. And in baseball, you could fail 7 out of 10 times and still go to the Hall of Fame. So yes, failure, scar tissue, rejection, all that type of stuff. Speaking of owners that knew me, liked me, whatever, and then, would say no, that they don't want to pay for, Vinicial at the time, whatever. And you can't take it personal. It's, it's just part of like sales and all that. So yeah, I didn't think we were going to rehash that, but I'm totally fine talking about it because I don't think there's enough conversation around, failure and rejection and, building up scar tissue over time.
But what you learn from that, like, people use this phrase a lot, square one, right? And I do a lot of like working with organizations on how to communicate, right? And it's like, well, we're back to square one again. I go, you are. And someone else smarter than me, I think it was Steven Johnson. He's an author. He said this. He goes, but you go back to square one, a different person. Like, you go back to square one and you're able to see a process and you can spot the landmines. Or maybe not all of them, but you're like, I know what this doesn't feel right, or I've felt this before and I see where but hang on, let's look deeper. I feel like it makes you smarter, like square one, but a different person.
100%.
Yeah. All right. So diagnostic ultrasound, like, give people context, and why is this such a big deal? Why should more people be like their eyebrow test, where it happens for the podcast audience? It's when someone sees something and the eyebrows go up. It's like, this is something you should pay attention to.
Yeah. So if you work in outpatient orthopedics, brick and mortar physical therapy, you have a mobile practice, concierge, whatever you want to call it, you take Medicare, you don't take Medicare, whatever you want to call it. I believe diagnostic ultrasound. So here's the device I use. I am not an affiliate. I have no connection. I'm not selling anything, but this is the
who makes that one?
This is the Butterfly IQ. And there's another one this plugs right in. I can't do a demo right now, but this plugs right into the iPhone or an iPad. They make an iOS version and they also make an Android version. There's also another device called Clarius, which is like just portable. It's just like it looks like almost like the size of another phone. I believe this device can save outpatient or mobile physical therapy. Now, you Jimmy, you go on Chad Madden's podcast and a couple other podcasts, and you were talking about like the messaging, and I 100% agree with that. about consumers and how can we reach the consumers and all that. Everything that you've ever said about that, I 100% agree with, and you're right. But the thing with this is, like, I started using this during COVID, during 2020, and I noticed, and this was, again, it's my gut. Like, you have to have some amount of, belief or understanding in, like, your target customer, your consumer, whoever. I just looked at it. I did some training, did some courses. There's a million free YouTube videos about how to do it. I can literally, like, if you had a device right now, I could teach you, I could walk you through on this call how to look at the supraspinatus, which is, the most commonly torn rotator cuff tendon. If you had a device, a little bit of ultrasound gel, put it, here with your arm in a certain position, you would immediately be able to visualize supraspinatus. Now, that's a little bit easier. There's other joints that are more challenging. You have to kind of learn the anatomy of what you're looking at through here. But the consumer immediately gets it and sees it, and they immediately will have a little bit more trust or perceive that practice or that therapist or that owner or whoever to have a little bit more of advanced training or knowledge or understanding. And obviously you have to do, you have to learn it first and then introduce it to patients. But during 2020, when I was using this, my word of mouth referrals, they started saying different words or different phrases. So historically, before I used the device, it was the word of mouth referrals were, Dave's great, or his team's great, or his practice is great, and they, are great with communication. They get back to me right away. They're able to schedule us that week or the next week. The billing and the paperwork was seamless. All the normal stuff. And yes, they're empathetic and they're professional and they're courteous and they show up on time for home visits and whatever, right? So that's historically what our word of mouth referrals and Google reviews and all that used to say. And then the word of mouth referrals were someone coming to us and saying, Tom said you have some portable futuristic imaging device that you can bring to my home apartment or office or workplace. Now, during 2020, it was home apartment because more people were working from home. So the word of mouth referrals were referring more to this device on how the consumer was perceiving it, or they were impressed by it. And it elevated like the offering of like a 60-minute home visit. Now, I say that it's going to save the profession because it's your messaging, but like just in a physical technological device where immediately, instead of the words of the messaging, the consumer will like kind of jump a few steps ahead and be like, obviously this person is a little bit more advanced or different. We're not trying to say that we're MDs. We do say, Dr. Kittle, Dr. Sean, Dr. Samuel, whoever. We say we're DPTs, Doctor of Physical Therapy. We're not trying to misconstrue anything. But this is something that can get the attention of the end consumer a little bit differently, or sometimes a little bit more efficiently. And then you're going to do everything else normally, which is your evaluation, your movement assessment, your hands-on treatment. Everything else after that is the same. Maybe you do a reevaluation of the imaging in 4 to 6 weeks if you wanted to.
So to me, because some people like, initially when I was hearing you say that, I was like, well, that's a shame because they're not talking about Dave anymore. Now they're talking about a thing. But really, it was what Dave is able to do with that thing. It's a different thing. It's this new thing, right? It's a new tool. But there's shockwave therapy and dry needling, and those are tools too, right? So the reason I like this, or the reason this feels a little bit like I wouldn't like I'm with you on why the results of the reviews is it feels like it's just an extension of Dave's eyes.
And brain.
And then he can, but it allows them to see what you're saying. So it is almost like it's a visual storyteller. It's a tool that helps you tell visual stories. I don't know. I think I'm like live, like thinking about this, and I see what you're saying there. Yeah.
I mean, we still, of course, get the word of mouth where they're mentioning myself or other therapists or whatever.
As they should be, sure.
But it's an elevated value proposition. And so the value equation from Alex Hormozy about and he gives an example of like speed to result or speed to outcome. And he'll say something like, liposuction versus like personal training. Like personal training is more natural, but it takes a lot more time and effort by the customer, the consumer. And liposuction is like, it's faster, it costs more money, or there's more risk too, But they could just suck some fat out, and like now you don't have the fat, but like and the timeline to get there it's much shorter. Now we know, and I know that a lot of consumers, they do want some reassurance sometimes of imaging. Now I'm not saying this is necessarily going to replace MRI, but this can provide movement. So if you're doing the supraspinatus, you can actually look at the supraspinatus while they're going through shoulder abduction or flexion or any other rotation movements. With MRI, it's static images, and in some cases, you can see the outside periphery of bone. So you can, with some courses and with some training of diagnostic ultrasound, you can actually look at things like rib fractures. Does the person actually have a rib fracture or not? During 2020, I had a BMX cyclist, a client, who thought he fractured his rib. We took a look at it from different angles, and I didn't see any rib fracture. Now, of course, there's other practice owners we could get into that are going to say, oh, liability and all that. But I mean, there's going to be, there's a trade-off. And so the consumer saw this, the result of getting some reassurance of their situation was sooner with this. And then, of course, it helps with buy-in and the therapeutic alliance for everything else that comes after the diagnostic ultrasound, which would be all the standard evaluation and treatment.
It's a tool. It's an extension of your eyes and brain. It sounds as if, right? And you're not promising anything that you're not confident in promising. You're not saying anything that it's not doing. This is where I think our profession is fantastic, and I think our own detriment is that dirty S word, right? The 4-letter S word. It's sell, which is like you're selling, you're showing, you're educating, right? Like I did a reel a couple months ago that blew up because I was like, look, my dad was a fireman. He didn't really have to sell being a fireman. Like you got fire, he shows up, right? But the fire department, they don't sell anything, but they do educate, right? Stop, drop, and roll, call 911. This is when you do this. That's not gross. That's not dirty. So do the same thing. But by all means, by all means, do not promise anything that you are not sure that you deliver, right? I also did an Instagram carousel the other day. I read a study on the phrase studies show or research shows. And that actually puts a distance between people. It doesn't close them. So explain it to them in their terms, right? Because we actually know that studies really don't show anything. They're just a piece of the puzzle. They don't really show anything. But can you clearly explain the benefit instead of the feature, which is diagnostic ultrasound? Cool. What does it do? How do you explain? You pull that thing out of your bag and someone goes, "What's that thing? It looks like you're going to buzz my head. It looks like a hair clipper. What is that, Dave? What's going on?" How do you explain it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we usually talk about it up front on the phone before we're ever in the patient's home or apartment, since we're doing home visits. Someone might see it on our website or read a Google review about it or something. So we talk about it in terms of trying to see if there might be imaging that can identify whatever the source of their pain is. Now, sometimes it might, and sometimes it doesn't. Like an X-ray or an MRI will sometimes be clear, and the physician's like, yeah, your X-ray and MRI is clear, and then the patient still has a lot of pain. So then the pain, is nerve related or something that's like just not visible through imaging. So it's not that different or no different than that. But I think we just describe it as we can take a look. We may see something, we may not see something. And I've done this as well, which I think I need to say, which is we'll do some imaging. And if there's I had a buddy with an Achilles tear, and I look at the involved side and then I imaged the uninvolved side because I had time, and it looked like a fairly moderate tear of his Achilles. It wasn't completely ruptured, but it was also not perfect compared to the uninvolved side. So I said, this is definitely a partial tear. Here's your options. You could do physical therapy with me or another place or whatever. Or if you wanted some additional imaging, I can refer you to a podiatrist and you can get an MRI, and then you guys could get a little bit of a different look. He went to the podiatrist, got an MRI. The surgeon was like, yes, it's a partial tear, but it's not bad enough for surgery. You have a physical therapist, you have a practice that you're going to continue physical therapy. So now it becomes like I'm referring back to physicians, and then the physician referring back to us, which then kind of opens up the floodgates of that relationship. as opposed to like a turf battle around imaging. Again, we're not trying to replace physicians or replace MRI or X-ray or anything like that. So the consumer kind of understands, like, there's imaging, like we're pretty much the only ones that do imaging in the physical therapy world. We're the only one in New York City doing imaging in someone's home. So that's like, it's just unique and compared to what else the consumer's seeing out there, as far as I know.
So I am not bagging on Dave. All I'm saying is you got to get that pitch down to like 2 sentences.
You're right.
As you were saying that, I was like, listen, man, BLDR, because everything that you said was probably right, but even I'm like, okay. So I literally, while you were saying that, went to ChatGPT and I was like, help me. And I gave it 3 different prompts because the first couple didn't do it right. But finally, I was like, give it to me again in conversational language in 2 sentences so 99% of people can understand it. Here's what my custom AI, by the way, is named Very G.
Very G. I see that.
So, and for the podcast audience, this is how it decided to explain diagnostic ultrasound by a physical therapist to a patient. Diagnostic ultrasound is like having a live camera showing us what's happening inside your muscles and joints, helping me pinpoint your problem and treat it more effectively. That's sentence 1. That says a lot. That's feature forward language. Features. We didn't have to talk about how many gigahertz or megawatts or any of those things. That's out. Second sentence. It's quick, painless, and done right here in the clinic or in your house, making it easier for us to get you back on your feet. I'm going to copy paste that. I'm going to email it to you.
Thank you.
And I'll print that out, put it like, get the brother P touch, put that right out. But I think that's, as dumb as that sounds, as minuscule that is, that messaging is terribly important. Because the minute it overwhelms me, I'm sort of like, I don't know, man, maybe I'll buy it. I don't know. It's a jump ball at best. And I'm like, give them no room for misunderstanding. So anyway, I sort of understood it, but I wanted clarity. All right, we're going to jump topics. Oh, wait, no, the last thing I want to do, what's your prediction of the future, next 3 to 5 years? Where's be bold, be like, here's where I think it's going. Like, what do you think it's going to look like?
I don't think diagnostic ultrasound is going to grow that much significantly in 3 years in physical therapy. It's only going to be still like the early adopters, like therapists and owners like me. You have to put in effort to learn it. You have to buy a device that's a couple $1,000. Again, I have nothing to tell you.
What's that thing run?
So this was $2,500 in 2020. So it's probably around that price or maybe a little bit more.
So it's a business expense, number one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Number 2, I mean, do you chart? Is there a code? Yeah. So I've been like, can.
So we haven't even, like, we don't charge on a code. So what we'll either do is we'll say it's like an extra $100, or in some cases, I've also brought this to, so I play weekend baseball in Brooklyn, and most of the guys complain of, shoulder pain and elbow and a bunch of issues. And I've done it for them just as a courtesy because I want them to be healthy and I want them to be good. And then just from doing that for free, but then I get word of mouth referrals just from that. And when they tell their friends and colleagues, they're talking about this device, plus they'll mention like previous hands-on treatment that I might have done with some of them and then got them results to then get back onto the field. But they will mention this. So that's another thing is, as opposed to thinking about coding or charging for it, I've also seen other practices run Facebook ads across the country where they do a live event, a live free, like instead of a workshop, but they'll just scan people for free. Now it only takes a few minutes, and you can show someone, you can get someone into your brick and mortar clinic. You can show, like, if they have an issue with elbow, wrist, carpal tunnel, shoulder, whatever it might be, hip, ankle, you can quickly, painlessly just hit them with some ultrasound gel, take a look. You can have you could have the view on your phone, iPad, laptop, whatever. You could kind of say, here's what we're looking at. But if you want to schedule an evaluation and kind of talk about what's going on or what successful treatment looks like, then, it kind of leads in. But that would be like, it's basically like marketing.
Right. Well, it's show versus tell, man. My favorite day in 3rd grade was show and tell. And it was because I got to bring in my, G.I. Joe hovercraft. That was the one where I became, like, for a hot 5 minutes, I was the coolest kid in 3rd grade. I got to bring in the G.I. Joe hovercraft that actually floated in the bathtub. It was awesome. But listen, if I wanted to buy this as an average person, I could, but I would then need to learn how to use it and understand what the heck I'm looking at. So that's really what you're selling. The tool is an extension of Dave.
Right. No, I mean, this is for providers, the actual device. But You're right about the demonstration. So PT Barnum, there were some bad things in this guy's history, but the good part of PT Barnum and Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus is he was the original showman. If you look up anything that he's ever done, he was like the original marketer, because everything that he did was a demo, was a demonstration. And that's what you just said, which is show and not tell.
Show beats tell. This is also why, and I'm bringing this back on the screen, this is also why this is important, right? So here's the lesson, or the thing that I try to hammer home to people. If you waver in your message, we've all played telephone in 3rd grade, right? So if you waver in your message, then the photocopy of the photocopy of the photocopy is going to be unrecognizable. Like by the 3rd iteration, it's going to be like, Dave has a thing that x-rays and takes it dissects my shoulder. It's like, no. Ultrasound. And I think ultrasound sounds really technical, but like it's been around in OBGYN long enough where it's like, oh, we get it. It's like a thing with the goo and the blah, 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 and we see things. So I think using a term like ultrasound we've jumped the shark. It's fine now. That's now not jargon. So I think having your message honed in your own words, in your own way, is terribly important because of that demonstration. You doing it in the dugout, and now that guy tells 3 of his buddies on a different weekend softball team, whatever. All right. Different technology, blood flow restriction. Want to say thanks to our friends from Owens Recovery Science, a single source for PTs looking for certification and the equipment to apply blood flow restriction rehabilitation training properly in your clinic. Find them online at owensrecoveryscience.com. They have their own podcast as well. It is conveniently and easily titled the Owens Recovery Science Podcast, where they go like an inch wide but a mile deep into BFR. And I just watched they just dropped another episode the other day. All right, so let's completely switch gears, because you're sort of a dynamic dude, doing a bunch of different things, right? We're talking tech there for a minute, but let's talk cash-based PT growth, right? Where we sit in the end of 2023, because that's what everybody does at the end of the year. We're like, let's look back and let's give predictions in 2024. How's this trend towards cash-based physical therapy changing the profession? It came on, although if you ask Jerry Durham, which I think he's right, everything's cash. It's like you put the cash in somewhere, somebody put the cash in somewhere, it's coming out. But, where's this going as we sit right now, and what are the key factors maybe driving its adoption or its increased popularity? What do you think?
That's going to definitely grow. Cash-based, out-of-pocket physical therapy, whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely going to grow faster than even, starting with a diagnostic ultrasound device. The reason is because of in-network reimbursement. There's going to be, in the next 3 to 5 years, there's just going to be more practices that move to one side or the other of the bell curve. So it's either going to be they stay in network, they're more volume based, and there's nothing wrong with that. But and the reason why I say this is because in New York State, the average reimbursement is like $70, $80 for in-network reimbursement. Now there's other states like, I don't know, like Idaho and stuff, where they're like over $100 per visit because it's more rural and there's less saturation of practices and providers and all that. So places like New York City or New York State and other states like that, there's a little bit more pressure on reimbursement. And so there's going to be more therapists going out on their own. There's going to be more therapists looking to join practices like us, where we can, we pay competitively higher because we kind of charge more and we accept some out of network benefits, and we're also mostly private pay. There's always going to be the in-network clinics that will service the patients that truly need it, whether it's Medicaid or Medicare or the folks that have, Obamacare or any other type of, government-funded policy. But there's going to be more folks, more therapists going, out of network or cash-based because they just want to make a certain amount per visit, or they want to deliver a patient experience. And some ways, the only way to do that is if they charge X amount of dollars, and it could be $100 a visit, or $125 or $150 or $200, whatever it is. And some of the forces, like I said, the health insurance reimbursement is one of the biggest ones, or the clawbacks and the games that a lot of these insurance companies play with payments, or sometimes they overpay you, and then like 3 to 6 months later they're like, oh, we overpaid you and now we need to take some money back. Or Medicare, if your notes are not great, then they might claw back some money or whatever. We're just we're stepping more into an era of a consumer who is just more wise and savvy, and there's physical therapy practices that I think will be able to take advantage of that, and just with their messaging, as we talked about, being able to serve more people and charge what they want, and not really have insurance companies being dictated or dictating, reimbursement or payment.
I got to find this video clip, and if I find it, I'll see if I can insert it here. But the guy was standing on the street corner in Times Square, and he was handing out and I might get the denomination wrong, but like ounces of gold, like some denomination, a package, a Ziploc bag of gold, and he was handing it out. And he's standing in the street corner in Times Square, and you get handed stuff every 28 feet, flyers for things. Some are Broadway shows, some are off Broadway shows.
Broadway.
But you're constantly handed things, right? So what he was demonstrating, and this guy was, at first I was like, this video's stupid. And then I got what he was doing. He was like, if you truly believe the thing that you're giving has value, it's really easy to do that. So if you're selling something you have doubt in, that comes across. And this is where I want to just grab the profession of physical therapy by the shoulders if they were like a person and be like, if you honestly believe what you do and you bring to the people that you can serve is valuable, then as Kevin Hart would say it with your chest. Say it with your chest. Again, if you take anything away from the 1,200 episodes of this podcast, it's saying what you actually believe doesn't mean you're persuading someone in a bad way or selling snake oil. Do not do that. Hard no. But if you believe what you're doing, say it with your chest, right? So if you're saying I'm worth $200 because you could have this problem for 3 months without me or a month with me minus a couple $100, is that, and then you give them the choice. This is where I love the movie Inception, which is I can put a thought in your head, right? I could be a snake oil salesman. I can use these words nefariously, but ultimately it comes down to, is this your decision or not? So be a good version of Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie, which is I'm presenting you with an idea. I make suggestions. This is where I take my favorite Peloton instructors saying, shout out to Dennis Morton, which is I make suggestions, you make decisions. But doing that clearly puts the scales of justice or the scales of value right in front of someone. And it's going to seem like I cost more than your in-network provider. Let me explain why that is. But you have to have this messaging down, because if it takes 3 minutes, it's 2.5 minutes too long. So this is where I just say, I used to get yelled at in undergrad because I would take all my normal liberal arts classes and it'd be write a 10-page paper. But the problem was all my core classes in journalism and communications were write a 1,000-word article on Monday, and then you'd submit that on Monday. And then on Tuesday, they'd say, great, take that 1,000-word article, write it in 500 words. You're like, that's not possible. And by Friday, you're writing 150 words, but they're the right 150 words, or they're the only 150 words that need to be there. They're the ones that need to be there. So anyway, all right. Let's take a look at something that is near and dear to your heart, and this is the one I wanted to get into, which is buying and selling practices. We're going to put your YouTube channel in the link in the description, but this is something that you've gotten into, is talking to or showing. I feel like you're showing more than telling people this is what it's worth. Maybe you should be thinking about this. Maybe thinking about something 10 years before you might do it or might not is a good idea. So, explain to people what you do with people in terms of business owners or clinic owners or physical therapists. Help them understand.
Sure. Well, I put out this YouTube channel. Actually, let me flip it back on you. The channel I put out, you said I'm teaching practice owners. Why do you think I'm spending time, money, effort doing that though? I have no advertising. I have no upsell, no course, no resort, no mastermind, no nothing. So Why am I putting that out?
It's a big deal. I think if they don't think about it, by the time they get to the end of the diving board, 10, 15, 20 years down their career, it might be too late to do something to get their hard-earned value out of it, where an ounce of prevention 10, 15 years before could be worth millions of dollars of cure in the end.
Right. But how do I benefit from that? Why would I do that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how you benefit from that. Looks like you're just making good work well known.
I know, but why would I? So the point is the whole channel and all that content is the marketing funnel to get practice owners to reach out to me and my team to potentially sell to us instead of selling to some other corporate or whatever.
There's your show versus tell. So yeah. Okay.
Right. And so we're looking to speak with practice owners about partnering or acquiring some or all their practice. So some practice owners might want to take some money off the table. Maybe we acquire 51% of their practice and they keep 40 or 20 or 30 or 40% of their practice. And then maybe we buy the rest of their equity 3 to 7 years after that. But we're looking to acquire practices. We're looking to partner with them. Some practice owners that we're speaking with, they're looking to get out 100% and they're looking to retire and step away. And maybe they help with the transition. Maybe they stay for, 6 or 12 months or something like that. It depends if they're absentee owner or if they're treating, 30 or 40 hours a week. Still, it depends. Every owner is different. Every practice is different. But we want to grow via acquisition and partnerships as opposed to just opening up all startup de novo clinics. So that's the whole point of the show and putting out content out there is also I can kind of show the buyer's perspective, because there's a lot of brokers and advisors will talk to these practice owners and say, because the broker or advisor will make 5 or 10% off the sale, right, on the sell side broker. So the broker will say they'll oftentimes inflate the value of the practice. So my content we put out there from the buyer side, which is like, yeah, your practice might be worth this or this, and here's how we look at it. And so it's my way of kind of trying to maybe influence or persuade some of these practice owners around valuation, around negotiating. Here's the games that buyers will play. We don't play these games, but here's how you can negotiate against us. Here's some of these things all around this whole process of exit strategy and succession planning.
So you're the guy, and I forget his name because his videos come up all the time, and I'm not even in the market to buy a car, but he's like a car dealer who like shows you all the tricks that other car dealers use. And he's like, so when they do this, this is what happens. And this one time that, so you're the Yoda of like, this is how this works and be careful of this and do or do not. There is no try and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And then the call to action is, hey, like if you're thinking about exiting or selling some of your practice or all of it, email us, call us. Here's our website, fieldmakergroup.com. Check us out. And Sturdy McKee's on our board, so everyone knows him, and he's a practice owner that's been around forever, and he's got a great name and brand, all that. And so we've had practice owners. Now it's easy for them to say, but we've had a lot of practice owners say, yeah, I'd rather sell to you and Sturdy and Marshall and your team as opposed to some big corporate or private equity backed faceless corporate or whatever. At least that's the whole point of it. Like now. Sure. Will they actually do it? We'll see. But like that's our positioning.
All right. So let's get into that in terms of buying and selling PT practices. You talked about the significance of having an exit strategy because it could cost you a lot, quite literally, or everything. Let's narrow it down to like what are the most crucial aspects to consider when planning to sell or partner with your practice.
Number one is having your books cleaned up. So whether it's your bookkeeper, your accountant, having a formal accounting firm work on your books to have not just doing your tax returns, but the P&L, the profit and loss statement, balance sheet, income statement, those financial documents. Every buyer, us and other buyers, will ask for those almost immediately in the beginning. It's like, hey, we'll sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then we'll look at your tax returns and those financial documents from the last 3 or 4 years. That's kind of like the cleaning up your house, getting your house in order. The books, sure. That's one of the biggest components. And then outside of that is like the whole trickle down of all the other reports, because the buyers like us, we're going to ask for productivity reports, lease agreement, anything that is any of the documents around your practice. And sometimes those will be all scattered all over, either in like paper, like in different, bins and cabinets. So maybe, consolidate some of those things, kind of start to get organized with those documents, and it'll make the process a little smoother for you.
How far ahead of you thinking about, selling or partnering would you recommend someone get into this? Is this like just plain old good practice? Like even if you're not thinking about it anytime soon, it's like, this is probably just good practice.
Exactly. So the earlier, the better. Worst case scenario would be, let's say a practice owner is 65 years old, right? And all of a sudden they have a heart attack or have some medical issue. And they're like, I need to sell my practice. I need to retire. I need money for a nursing home, for home care, for whatever. They're going to not get pennies on the dollar, but they're not going to have leverage in the negotiation because they're having to sell in like a crisis with like out of desperation. So the inverse of that would be start when you don't need to sell. Start, you could speak with us, you could speak to other buyers, you could sign non-disclosure agreements with them and just not even give them financials. You could just say, hey, let's just talk candidly and privately, but I'm really not that serious, but you could still talk to buyers. So it should be years ahead of time. It should be years before you actually do want to sell. You could get an idea of like approximate valuation, what buyers are, how much, like what percentage of the money they might pay you at close, and then how much might be an earnout. I mean, all that you could do, while also saying like, hey, I'm kind of kicking the tires about selling my practice, but it might be 3 to 7 years from now. So I'm really not that serious. And some buyers will speak with you and some won't, but the earlier the better.
Yeah, and at 5 to 10%, it is in your best interest as Dave to like have that conversation, because 3 to 5 to 7 years from now, that relationship could be the difference between them going with you and not going with you. I forget one of those like super famous real estate agents that they make reality shows on, and I forget what they're called. I forget what this dude's name is, but he was telling a story once about he met a guy like at a party, gave him his card, and he said, I emailed that guy. He said he told me what kind of house he was looking for. I emailed that guy once a month for 7 years, and after 7 years, he finally got a response back and was like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy responded. He wound up selling the guy, a $3 million place in the Hamptons. And he sold the guy's wife a place because they got divorced. So it was like that one email per month, which I figured out how to automate, right? But it was personalized in terms of types and price ranges and areas. Why that turned into $2 million plus listing sales for this real estate agent. And that's just good old communication.
Yeah. But just to clarify, so we're not brokers. We're looking to buy the practices. That 5 or 10% is going to the broker. We're looking to actually acquire the practice.
But what, all right. Well, so same, it's still right. So that relationship you're building, the juice is well worth the squeeze in terms of like taking that person's call and taking an hour or more worth of time saying to understand that person. Oh, yeah. What's one final thing that you'd want to say in terms of most crucial aspects? You gave us 2 already. What's the third?
Always be advertising. So paid ads. This could be paid ads for diagnostic ultrasound for your physical therapy practice. For us, it's like I'm paying for podcast editing and like all this stuff that I don't want to do with publishing our podcast. Sure. But it is marketing, so there's going to be some downstream return on investment for that. The more that we as a profession can market, you got to go back and listen to other episodes with Jimmy about the messaging. And I definitely like the interview you did with Chad Madden on his podcast about the messaging. But the more that we can advertise and market, I mean, it's not a dirty word. The more that we get out there as a profession, the more that we can grow, the more opportunities we'll have. We'll be able to reach more consumers. There'll be more word of mouth from that. There'll just be more goodwill in the community. So always be advertising.
That's what I learned day one. And I think I just said this on someone else's podcast the other day, because I went to a Franciscan university, and I had brothers as professors. So like brown robe, rope around their waist, hood. And Brother Basil asked in, intro to PR, what is, if you guys are in PR, you signed up for this class, your parents are paying money for this. What is public relations? And a bunch of, aspiring PR or communication students were throwing spin and control the narrative, all the typical terms. And Brother Basil, of course, just like a man of the cloth, was like, silly kids. He's like, public relations is building a relationship with the public. Like the answer is in the question. And then the second thing he impressed upon us is you're either doing public relations well or you're doing it poorly. You're doing it. If you're like, I don't really do PR, then you are. And you're sending out a message that is that, not the person I should trust, or not the one that's really putting forth the effort. And it also doesn't need to be hire a PR firm for $20,000 a month and do this grandiose thing. It also doesn't mean you need to be the expert. You could hire people, right? I mean, I could learn how to unclog my toilet, but if I try it real quick, it doesn't work, I'm gonna hire someone else. I'm not just gonna go get a degree in it. So there's a bunch of different ways. But again, if you're not doing it, you are, but you're doing it poorly. All right, Dave, we have a new segment called 60-second PT, where I'm going to fire just quick response questions to you, and you're going to give it back to me. And then you only have to keep going for 60 seconds. But the faster you answer, the more questions you get to. Are you ready for 60-second PT?
Ready.
Let me get the stopwatch going. All right, 60-second PT starts right now. All right, Dave, what's one common myth about PT you frequently encounter?
Oh, man. That it takes too long
Describe
to get better.
Describe your approach to patient care in 3 words.
Empathetic, compassionate, results.
Perfect. What's the most innovative change you've seen in PT recently?
Got to go with the diagnostic ultrasound.
That was a softball for you. How do you balance evidence-based practice with patient-specific needs?
Reps in the trenches, treating more patients.
What's your favorite part of being a physical therapist?
Having patients get better when they didn't think it was going to work, naturally and conservatively.
What's the most challenging part of your job?
Communicating and speaking and interacting with different personalities in New York City.
Yeah. What's the most rewarding part of your job?
The outcomes, getting folks back to doing the things that they love to do.
2 more. What's a common mistake new physical therapists make?
Overconfidence, ego.
And what book should every physical therapist read?
I Feel Great and You Will Too by Pat Croce, one of the most legendary physical therapists ever and entrepreneur, then became the president of Philadelphia 76ers.
All right. That's a cool story. Wait. He was a physical therapist, became president of the 76ers? How do I not know this story? Is this guy still around?
He is an amazing entrepreneur. He drafted Allen Iverson. He was the one on TV drafting Allen Iverson for the Sixers. He grew 40 locations in the Philadelphia area, East Coast area, back in like the 80s, 90s. Sold them to NovaCare, then joined the Philadelphia 76ers. He's done amazing. He buys bars and restaurants in Key West, Florida, and he's an amazing entrepreneur and a physical therapist.
All right. You're off the hot seat. That's 60-second PT. Find out more about Dave in the comments below. All right. We do a segment on the show as well called 3 Questions. Are you ready to do 3 questions?
Ready.
On the hot seat with 3 questions on the PT Pintcast.
All right. 3 questions brought to you by ATI. They're leading the charge in PT clinical research with more than 900 clinics achieving top marks in CMS's merit-based incentive program. They're the team to join for career growth. Explore opportunities at atipt.com. First question. If you could have any superpower, Dave, to enhance your PT skills, what would it be and why? Any superpower?
X-ray imaging. Then I wouldn't need the diagnostic ultrasound.
That's sort of why I wrote. And I was like, I think he's going to go that way. It's X-ray vision. Let's look back. Let's go nostalgia. Look back on your journey. What's a piece of advice you received that fundamentally changed your approach to physical therapy?
Persistence in regards to like differential diagnosis. So if something doesn't work, treatment doesn't work, looking at different angles, looking at different approaches from one of my mentors when I first started.
All right, let's go inside out too. Last question on 3 questions. If you weren't in physical therapy, what completely different career path might have you chosen, and why would you have done that?
It's something in business, probably finance.
I got it. It's where the cash is. All right, Dave, you're off the hot seat. That's 3 questions. Last thing we do on the show is the parting shot.
This is the parting shot.
All right, you've done this before. Mic drop moment, soapbox statement. What do you leave the audience with today, Dave?
As again, like I said, always be advertising. So we just got to get our message out there. Parting shot is get the messaging down for your service, your tools, your skills, your outcomes. Get those out into the public in different forms, audio, video. Get out into the community, reach more people, and we can help more people.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what marketing is. If you want to break it down, it's saying the same thing, a clear message, 1,000 different ways, right? And you can do that. People get caught up in the media. Media is just words, pictures, sounds, videos, graphics. Like that really is media. Media existed when they were writing hieroglyphics on the inside of the pyramids. It's just a medium to transform that message. Work on the message first, then worry about the graphics and the animations and all that. That's just one of the 1,000 ways you'll communicate it. Dave, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing what you do to help enlighten practice owners and for talking to us about the future, or what you think the future is in diagnostic ultrasound.
Thank you very much. And to the audience, if you're not subscribed to the PT Pintcast on YouTube, do so right now. I appreciate that. Thank you.
my BHAG, and I don't know if I shared this on Facebook. We really just went in on YouTube 6 months ago because Tony Maritato was like, "This is stupid. Why are you not doing?
You're crushing it." And shout out to Tony for urging you.
Tony's a good pusher, and I said, "All right, we got to 1,000 in 6 months. Could we get to 10,000 by the end of 2024?" So that is my BHAG, my big, hairy, audacious goal that I'm pushing towards for 2024. All right, they say the best conversations happen at happy hour. Thanks for coming, ours.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com, or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.